Now, as we have mentioned tonight, we will be welcoming our special correspondent Alex Chamoda, who will take a closer look at what Kenyan diplomats are telling the world about Kenya in the face of a runaway insecurity. That is diplomatic narrative that will be coming your way later on in this newscast. Now, let's begin here in Nairobi, where President Uhuru Kenyatta has spent the better part of his second-year anniversary writing and signing some special letters. The president has written to each of the families of the victims of the Garissa University College terrorist attack, conveying his sympathies. KTN's Sharon Momanyi has a copy of the president's letters to the bereaved families.
Just when the public was getting concerned about the personal touch or lack of it by the president in handling families of the bereaved, the president has today penned down his message of condolence. And very personal it is, as he has written to each of the families, acknowledging their deceased children by name. The letter reads in part, and I quote, "I write to you with great pain and sadness, hoping to share a few words of comfort and sympathy over the untimely death of your daughter by the hands of terrorists. Miriam," and the president here refers to one of the victims, "was a young, productive person of great promise. She had every right to live and realize her dream in life, and you had every right to expect much from the sacrifice, love, and support invested in her growth and development." End of quote. The president continues to say in the letter, and I quote, "I write to you in humility to express my regret at the loss of your dearly beloved child. We share your pain. Accept my condolence and that of the entire country." The president assures the grieving families that the whole country stands strong as a nation and is holding their hands. He writes, and I quote, "I promise that as a nation, we shall never forget them, nor forgive those who took her life. The whole nation stands with you at this difficult and painful time. We pray for you every day that Almighty God may give you comfort and help us all find answers to this tragedy." End of quote. In the letter, the president regrets that terrorists are now using the country's own young people to perpetrate their evil. He has given the bereaved families assurance that the government is increasing efforts to contain the threat of terrorism. He writes, and I quote, "My government assures you of justice for this brutality. We pledge to work harder for a better and more just country in honor of the memory of those we have lost." End of quote. The president has at now signed 130 letters. He will sign the rest after the ongoing identification procedures are complete. State House communicates that each of the letters will be personally delivered to the families by a senior administration official. Sharon Momanyi, KTN.
The suspended secretary to the cabinet, Francis Kimemia, the long-serving public servant, surprised journalists by telling his colleagues in government to ask for help on how to handle challenges of security. Speaking in reaction to the Garissa attack, Kimemia said he and others like him have institutional memory in such matters and had a lot to contribute to help Kenya deal with insecurity. He says the government needs to secure the country and protect Kenyans from the senseless killings. KTN senior political reporter Sam Ogina has the details.
The long-time civil servant and former Internal Security Permanent Secretary has blasted the Jubilee administration for failing to secure the nation. Kimemia, who serves the Kenyatta regime as secretary to the cabinet, pointed out inadequacies in Uhuru's administration in securing the homeland, saying the country is losing lives of its citizens unnecessarily.
I don't think we need to keep on losing our young people the way we are losing our young people today. So I think this is something that all of us Kenyans need to work together, involve the people of this country, make sure this country is secured. But we cannot do so without the people themselves also participating in the security architecture of this country.
The former Internal Security Permanent Secretary says Jubilee should seek counsel on securing the nation from people with institutional memory at Homeland Security Frontier.
I've been in charge of security in this country. I think we need to do much more than we are doing to secure this country. So I'd like to, maybe later on we talk to our brothers in the Interior Ministry and see how we can work together. We still have institutional memory, whether we are in or out. We still have institutional memory on how that matter needs to be sorted out.
The suspended secretary to the cabinet challenged President Uhuru Kenyatta to scale up security operations in the country to secure the nation.
And say that we are still available as Kenyans to participate in this.
Appearing before the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to face grilling over corruption allegations, Kimemia blamed the change of regime, claiming the current regime is tainting his 37 years in public service. He is accused of irregularly awarding a tender worth 1 billion shillings as well as being linked in disenfranchising Kenya railway workers from acquiring their housing units worth 500 million shillings.
In any case, you also know that we have had various problems after when the new government came in place. A lot of comments have been made about me. A lot of allegations have been made against me. And that happens when you move regimes from one regime to another. It doesn't matter how well you did it. But there will be those negative, allegations made against you. I don't want to quote them, you know them. Others
who appeared before the anti-graft agency are suspended Transport Cabinet Secretary, Engineer Michael Kamau, suspended Kenya Airports Authority Managing Director Lucy Mbugwa, and suspended Energy Cabinet Secretary Davis Chirchir. Samugina, KTN.
We made mistakes in Garissa. That is the admission by the government exactly a week after the attack that drew the attention of the world. It is an admission that will probably do very little to heal the pain of parents who lost their children in the attack, but admission nonetheless that could chart the way forward on the way the government and security agents handle disasters. Government spokesman Manoa Esipisu says there were shortcomings in the dealings with the Al-Shabaab massacre in Garissa. Linda Ogutu has the details.
5:30 a.m., the time an attack was launched on students who were just waking up at the Garissa University College. The hours went by, and with each hour, lives were lost as the terrorists embraced their senseless killings unabated. It would be several hours before help could get to them, and by the time the siege was over, tens of bodies were strewn all over the university. 148 lives were lost. And today, the government, through the presidential spokesperson Manoa Esipisu, admitted that indeed there were lapses in the response to Garissa University College terror.
Might there be delays? There might be. It's operational. But have you, in reacting, taken on board your other experiences? I would like to think that of course you have.
As the attack went on, the hope of many of the students were pegged on the new Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Nkaiseri, who has a military background, and the Inspector General Joseph Boynet. The two men had replaced men who had been accused of inefficiencies after several attacks in the country. The two have been criticized for being the first to arrive at the scene. They flew to Garissa and let their wrecker squad drive down to Garissa in the midst of the attack.
People commenting on whether the minister should have been on the ground or not don't even know what the variables were at the time. Do you know how the minister flew there? Would you have loved the Reke company to fly in a 3-seater helicopter? 25 of them. Those are details that I don't see people engage with, because actually you don't have those details. Rightly so. They are operational things. They wouldn't be bandied around the street.
And perhaps as they drove down, the men who ended the siege were strategizing on how to save as many lives as possible and end the siege in the shortest time possible. The last thing on their minds could have been a 500 shilling allowance that they would get from the government, an amount that has ached many Kenyans who think the men deserve better.
If you're going into a rescue mission, whether carrying your allowance is the most important thing on earth, is it? You're going to save lives, not to worry about money.
The Garissa attack came just days after the United Kingdom and Australia issued travel advisories to their citizens, warning them against visiting certain areas in the country, including Garissa. And so, even as it admitted its mistakes in Garissa, the government shared its frustration with the absence of mutual reciprocity, with the United Kingdom saying the intelligence report that led to the advisory was not shared. The admission by the government on its failures, it is hoped, will translate to a better response and coordination in rescue efforts if senseless killings are to be stopped. Linda Ogutu, KTN.
An admission by the government that they could have done better in Garissa. Now, security is just one of the challenges that the Jubilee administration has faced since it came into power, but the administration says it is not all doom and gloom. So on this day, the second anniversary, we are asking you, are you better off 2 years, after 2 years of Uhuru and Ruto's government? Are you better off after 2 years of Uhuru and Ruto's government? Remember, the hashtag we're using tonight is, are you better off? You can get in touch with me at Wilson_Mburu at KTN Kenya, and the SMS line is 22155. I'll be sampling your views as the bulletin continues. To Chiromo now, where families of some of the students who lost their lives in the Garissa attack have finally taken their bodies home for burial. But with disputes over the identities of some bodies, some families will have to wait a little longer, because experts are handling a rather curious case where two families are claiming the same body. But biometric results not only show that the body does not belong to either of the families, but they also reveal details of a student who's still alive.
A week after the attack on the Garissa University College, portraits of some of those who lost their lives lined the entrance to the Chiromo funeral parlor as families took bodies of their loved ones home for burial. The body of Selfa Wanda, a 21-year-old second-year student, left for Kakamega shortly after 2 p.m. Her body is among 28 bodies that have so far been released to their families. But some bodies will not be released just yet, as experts try to resolve issues of double identification. The body of Doreen Gaki is among the disputed bodies. Her brother, Duranera Kadhiari, says the body, which he identified on Monday, is that of his sister.
I met another family, that is the family of Mildred from Bungoma, claiming the same body.
The families were advised to wait for a biometric test to scientifically ascertain the identity of the body. The results only served to add more confusion.
Funny enough, when the results arrived yesterday, it was reflecting a totally different person. That is Esther Gitumbu, who was also a student there, but she's a survivor. We called her from her home, we talked with her.
Even as fingerprints results showed the body did not belong to any of the two families claiming it, Duranera says he did not need a biometric test to establish the identity of his sister.
The ear is twisted at this point, yeah? So actually she can't even wear an earring properly. So when I arrived, I didn't go for anything else. I went and straight looked at her ear, and I said, this is my sister.
Duranera says the body of his sister was not badly mutilated, hence the ease of identification. To him, the identity of his sister is undisputable.
I'm 1,000,000% sure it's my sister.
He is questioning the credibility of the fingerprinting process.
What I'm asking, is it possible if there are other means, we call the other family which is claiming this body, we go again view the body. If physical identification is not possible, can we go for DNA or something else? Because up to this point, we don't know now what even to trust.
The identities of 124 bodies have been ascertained through fingerprints. Fingerprinting experts from the CID's scenes of crime are set to retake fingerprints of disputed bodies. 12 bodies are yet to be identified, with families banking on the fingerprinting to ascertain the identities of their loved ones. For some families, however, even the biometric tests are not providing the much-needed final answers. Rita Tinina, KTN.
Now, as mentioned earlier, it is the second anniversary of Jubilee. When this government took over, they declared they would focus on what they called economic diplomacy. But the frequent terror attacks have complicated Kenya's image abroad. So, how do the many diplomats out there still convince the world that Kenya is the place to be? Tonight, KTN special correspondent Alex Chamwada takes a closer look at how Kenya is handling this security crisis in the eyes of the world.
South Coast, one of Kenya's key tourist destinations, is where the diplomats had met for a week-long conference to sharpen their skills in marketing Kenya.
Both from the CS and the PS.
They had discussed strategies to assure the world that Kenya was safe and that terrorism was a global challenge. They had mooted ideas on how to use their diplomatic skills to have investors troop into the country in line with Kenya's push for economic diplomacy.
That is why I'm fighting so hard for Kenya Airways to obtain direct landing rights in US.
To invest in our country, as an example, you win by cutting down your production costs. We win by ensuring that there is employment creation for our people and transfer of skills.
India has achieved food security, so I think we can learn from them. In terms of mechanization and irrigation,
in the next few years, we are going to pursue aggressively the African market. And therefore, as the president speaks, you will hear of intra-Africa trade, Africa number 1, Africa number 2, Africa number 3, because that's where the market is. If you are looking for money, then you go to people with money. We want Microsoft to come and set up their manufacturing here.
After the South Coast retreat, they flew to Nairobi. They had been on their final day of the discussions on the role of the Kenya diaspora when the unexpected happened. The Garissa campus attack. Some of the diplomats had spelled out their anti-terrorism strategies.
And the strategy must come from us. If they have information which they can share with us, they share that quickly.
The Turks have learned how they are able to isolate terrorists within the same faith. When we have cooperation between the Kenya intelligence system and the Turkish intelligence system, it helps Kenyans to be trained and to learn how to do that.
The Garissa attack occurred a day after President Uhuru Kenyatta had sensationally rubbished a travel advisory issued by the United Kingdom.
Wenyewe wanakuja kushinda golf Windsor every other afternoon, lakini wakisimama pale wanasema msiende Kenya, hakuna usalama. Tell them Kenya is safe, is as safe as any capital in any country in the world.
Analysts say while terrorism is a global challenge, Kenya's diplomats should go beyond that narrative and tell the world how the country was dealing with it in order to inspire confidence among investors and tourists.
They must understand what our national security policy talks about. Our interests as a nation, it speaks about our thinking in the geopolitics of the region, it speaks about our engagement with other international community members. They must all understand the strategies that we put in place as a country. 1, to fight crime. 2, radicalization. 3, extremism. And of course, 4th, which is the totality of the 3 that I mentioned, terrorism.
The president's outbursts have once again raised the big question: are travel advisories misunderstood? Take the recent terror alert by the United Kingdom issued on the 27th of March this year, for example. The British government was specific on areas within 60 kilometers from the Kenya-Somalia border, with Garissa among the spots in that alert. And the question is, were British tourists told to avoid Kenya?
Kenya is as safe as any other country. The only problem is the narrative. The travel advisory from the UK does not restrict UK nationals from visiting Kenya. At the moment, it has restrictions on our border with Somalia, parts of Mombasa Island, and that is all. Repeat tourists know about Kenya. They'll continue to come, but there is a challenge, yes, that with travel advisories, tour firms may not be able to get insurance cover for some of the tourists to visit areas for which the government of the UK has issued advisories for essential travels only.
What's your strategy to counter that narrative?
We address meetings and conferences, engage with parliamentarians, engage with government officials, engage with the private sector.
Some of the tourists I met in South Coast had their narrative too.
For me, very bad if the president tells the people we can stay without foreigners. I mean, the tourism is one of the biggest points in Kenya. If there is no tourist, I don't know what will happen with Kenya. When this Al-Shabaab attacked Kenya about 1 year ago, there were some cases here, even in Mombasa and Nairobi, you know that thing. Then they said, be careful in Kenya, but they never warned the people, don't go to Kenya.
As much as they don't want their taxi drivers to come, President Obama has said he's coming.
A Kenyan diplomat who sought anonymity said, quote, travel advisories are not necessarily bad because even locally, Kenyans sometimes are advised by local authorities on the areas to avoid in case of security alerts, end quote. Observers say a look at the British travel information to its citizens indicates that it focuses not only on Kenya whenever necessary, but also on other parts of the world. However, Kenyan authorities insisted that some of the alerts were not genuine.
We strongly believe that these advisories are driven by considerations other than security.
And the question is, when issuing security alerts, does the UK share what it knows with the government of Kenya?
We are particularly concerned that the countries that have issued advisories are considered friends who have been part of our counter-terrorism effort all along.
The British government says terrorism represents a shared threat and requires a shared response, and that the United Kingdom provides an extensive and ongoing program of counter-terrorism assistance to the Kenyan government. Then comes in the role of the media. During the meeting at the Leisure Lodge Resort in South Coast, media experts sought to challenge the narrative that journalists were being unpatriotic, hence contributing to Kenya's bad image abroad.
A columnist had written the headline was the most unlivable city in the world. And that that columnist was talking about Kenya.
Patriotism does not mean blind support for the government. Patriotism does not mean that things are happening and you close your eyes to them. Patriotism for me is loving your country, that when something is wrong, you're ready to scream and shout about it so that it can be corrected.
It would be good if the president, Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, came to Germany and meet the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, for instance, and talk with her. That is in television everywhere, and that is a good marketing for Kenya.
Security in Kenya really just lies around the terror threat. And as soon as we can tame the terrorist threat, then we are often taking over.
To reap the benefits of economic diplomacy, analysts say Kenya should up its game in anti-terror war, anti-corruption war, and have a clear communication strategy. Now, this year, there are two major opportunities for Kenya to market itself. First, the July Obama visit during the Global Entrepreneurship Summit. Secondly, the World Trade Organization meeting that will take place in Nairobi in December, a meeting that will bring into the city at least 6,000 delegates.
It will mean a lot for business. We estimate that it will bring to Kenya all the ministers of trade of the 163 countries that are members of WTO.
As they return to their various destinations, the Kenyan ambassadors and high commissioners will be navigating through a mixture of narratives, and observers say the key is to be strategic and stick to the best diplomatic narrative in Kenya's interest. For KTN, I'm Alex Chamwada.
We're still smiling at that clip of the president doing his rounds in that room. Very interesting piece. Alex Chamoda will, of course, be giving us regular updates on reports here on KTN as a special correspondent, tackling the big stories in the country and beyond, and he will be back next week. Now, let's remind you of our big question tonight before we take a very quick break. It is 2 years since Uhuru and Ruto took over office. We are asking, are you better off since they took office? Let me take some responses here. There's an SMS here that says, doesn't have a name on it, says, we aren't any better. The presidency has not shown us anything other than the art of complaining, which by patriotism has gone to nil. Let's look at Twitter, and I had some very interesting responses here. Felix Aoko, who says, nothing has changed. We hope that the government will rise. Only one problem. This is a very slow government. Hashtag, are you better off? Let's see whether we can get some more responses. Tracy here says, no, we are not better off, seeing as the Jubilee government has failed to deal with insecurity and corruption. Frederick Okango says, we have experienced challenges in tackling security and corruption so far in the last 2 years, so he doesn't feel that we are any better since Uhuru and Ruto took over the reins of power in this country. See whether I can get some more responses here. King Yatich says, no, things are worse. Insecurity, corruption, nepotism, tribalism, and land grabbing. Nothing to smile about. Let's see whether I can get another response here. Not at all, dear Mr. President. Take back everything but give us back our safety. Are you better off? We are asking, do you feel that life has changed for the better? Are you better off since Uhuru and Ruto took over power? They have been in power today. They have been in power for the last 2 years. Remember that the 9th of April is when they was, the year 2013 is when they were sworn in as president and deputy president. The SMS line is 22155. You can get me on Twitter as well, Wilson_Mburu. I continue sampling your views as the bulletin continues. I take a sip of water as we take a short break. We'll be back after this. Welcome back. You're watching KTN Prime. Let me ask you this. So what is your contribution to your own security where you are? And more importantly, what would be your best option if you find yourself under attack? Now, a section of Kenyans are of the opinion that the government should reintroduce a compulsory National Youth Service paramilitary training program for young people before college. KTN's Patrick Amimu now takes a look at what is the #1 issue on everyone's mind.
On Thursday last week, a group of heavily armed terrorists attacked Garissa University College and massacred 147 students. The ambushed students were vulnerable when they encountered the attackers. Tuesday this week, a section of university students held demonstrations in the streets of Nairobi demanding to be given guns to protect themselves.
We want guns! We want guns!
Giving students weapons may not be safe. It may require a lot of care. The security official should live among the students so that in case of an attack, they may be able to counteract the gangmen.
It would appear Al-Shabaab are now turning their asymmetrical war towards soft targets like learning institutions. And here are sample views from a cross-section of Kenyans on how students can be empowered and institutions secured.
A special you need to be trained to be placed in the institutions, and if those security men can have arms, it's good if they could be armed.
So previously, students used to go for NYS before joining campus. I'm privileged to have studied at Makerere University, whereby I used to see fellow students doing something called mchaka mchaka. That is empowering students on self-defense.
What the government should do is that the security wings, the police stations, should be located next to the learning institutions.
The Kenya National Private Security Workers Union wants the government to design an inclusive training manual for security guards to boost national security.
Security is not just about guns. Even intelligence information gathering and passing that information to relevant authority, very vital. So we can also assist the government in containing security by again giving some information to the authority which is relevant.
Whenever criminals or terrorists attack, private security guards find themselves in an awkward position since they are often armed with a whistle and baton. The private guards union says the National Assembly should accelerate passage of a bill seeking to equip private guards with guns.
Wezi besana mtu akona bunduki, hiyo wezi besana. Na ile ujuzi nasafanya, naweza hapa kidogo, niende mahali, niangalia askari usalama, ni report huko, nipige 99.
Once we take them to training institution, once we keep them proper knowledge on how to handle guns, then they'll handle them. And the procedures of acquiring a gun, the government will control.
The National Disaster Management Unit also advises that terrorists are people willing and ready to die. So, when you find yourself under attack, do everything and anything possible to get away from or fight your way out. They also advise Kenyans to secure themselves by being very alert about their surroundings and neighborhoods and to report anything and anyone suspicious.
5, 6.
Aside from guns and gun-wielding terrorists, experts say it's also important for each person to be prepared to deal with any attacker who confronts you at close range.
3, 4.
Peter Bahoya is an instructor for Kimpo Karate, an art of self-defense that is suitable in close combat. He is a 4th-degree black belt holder. He takes us through some defense techniques. For instance, how to stop a wild punch from an attacker.
Then from here, there's a lot you can do. Either step on him here, crush him, and crush him, clearing with him.
Students here are taught different defense tactics. I attempt a simulated knife attack on Bahoya to see how he could disarm me.
Ikiwa hapo naweza mmalizia bana.
Bahoya says learning martial arts could act as a first line of defense before security agencies are mobilized for the rescue mission.
We want our country to be safe, we want our family to be safe, we want everybody to be safe. And one way that we can help these guys or our people to be safe is to start learning martial arts.
All said, equipping oneself with self-defense skills and being alert about suspicious activities in your vicinity and reporting them to security agencies for action could minimize insecurity. Patrick Amimo, KTN.
Now, children at the Solidarity Child Rescue Center in Kasarani had a reason to smile after students from the United States International University, USIU, donated books, foodstuff, sewing machines, and a play area to the center. The USIU School of Business students in their group, dubbed Bellows Project, made their donations to the center as part of their organization's behavior and management course practicals. Baringo Senator Gideon Moy's wife, Zara Moy, was among the students who visited the rescue center to present their donations. The lecturer, Scott Bellows, said by helping the rescue center, the students will get practical work on how to manage an organization.
These are undergraduate students. Most of them are aged between 18 and 22, and they're taking an organizational behavior class. Okay, but in order to understand what is organizational behavior, a lot of them have not worked before. So in order to do that, you need to apply the learning. So what we do is make them start an organization. So we teach them, let's say, about organizational structure. They learn about organizational structure, and then they start a company with that structure.
We are given an opportunity to act as an organization. We do a mock organization where we choose our CEOs and the whole board of directors, and then we are given the opportunity to choose whether it will be a profit-making organization or a charity organization.
So far we've raised 336,000 in total, inclusive of the funding of the Standard Group, and we also bought some stuff for the home, items that they told us that they needed.
The Standard Group did contribute about 150,000 shillings towards that venture. We take another very short break, but don't you go away, Abiagina. We'll be back with the day's business.
A very good evening, and it's now time to catch the latest on what's been making headlines in the world of business. My name is Abi Agina. Financial services regulators are cracking down on irregular money movement with ties to terrorism-related companies and individuals. Following the central bank's move to shut down 13 cash transfer firms and forex bureaus, the Insurance Regulatory Authority has ordered insurance firms to cancel all insurance policies for individuals and companies that the government deems are associated with terrorism organizations. KTN's Michael Karanja has that report.
On Tuesday, the government, through a special gazette notice, put out a list of 85 individuals and companies it felt were linked to financing terrorism activities. This saw the Central Bank of Kenya freeze accounts for those on the list, as well as suspending the licenses of 13 cash transfer firms. The list features hotels and transport companies, as well as human rights organizations, which the government said had been picked following reports from the Financial Reporting Center. The Financial Reporting Center comprises of regulators such as CBK, the Insurance Regulatory Authority, the Capital Markets Authority, and the Retirement Benefits Authority. And today, the IRA also issued a circular to all insurance firms, directing them to terminate all insurance policies for those on the list. In a statement, the insurance regulator said it was using Regulation 11, Clause 3 of the Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act, which requires reporting institutions to take appropriate action by, amongst others, freezing until further notice the property or funds of designated persons. By suspending the policies, bus companies named in the list will cease to operate, as they cannot be on the road without valid insurance covers. For individuals, their policies will be terminated, leaving them exposed and thus cannot get any claims arising from their policies. In his address on Wednesday, Treasury Principal Secretary Kamau Thuge said those gazetted were linked to general terrorism financing, with investigations underway to investigate the link.
Based on the law, international law as well as our law, this is what we call a local list. There's an international list which we also get, and the last time we got it was in March. And once we get that list, we circulate it to the financial regulatory bodies, and the process is then they freeze the assets of persons or entities included in that list.
The Retirement Benefits Authority and the Institute of Certified Public Accountants are also in receipt of the circular. The Financial Reporting Center was established in 2012 to deal with, amongst others, financial crimes such as money laundering and funding of terrorism. Michael Karanja, KTN Business.
Many thanks there, Michael. And are you a car importer, or perhaps would you be importing a car anytime soon? Well, you might not be able to import a car that is not more than 8 years. Players in the energy and environment sectors are calling for reduction in the age limit of second-hand cars allowed into the country. The players want the government to lower the importation limit from 8 to 5 years as it seeks to curb carbon emissions in the country. A survey conducted by the United Nations Environmental Program UNEP on Global Fuel Initiative points out Kenya as one of the countries with the fastest growing vehicle population at a rate of 12% per year. With stricter importation policies, the agency says it will curb the pollution rate that is linked to car exhaust emissions. However, by lowering the age limit of imported cars, this could pose a major challenge to those who cannot afford to buy cars. Cars with 5 years of running tend to be more expensive compared to cars that have been on the road for 8 years. However, the Ministry of Energy and UNEP are in talks with the Kenya Revenue Authority to provide tax incentives for the importation of new cars.
We are trying to actually discuss with KRA, and we would even want to make an attempt. It is a little bit too late, but we would want to make an attempt to request the National Treasury to do something about that incentive for more efficient vehicles.
Consumers have a choice to make. When they buy a vehicle, they can buy a cleaner one and they can buy a dirtier one. Now there's no incentive to go for the cleaner one. They have no awareness, so they buy whatever they see.
Well, we'll be keeping an eye on how that story continues to develop. Moving on, hotels at the coast continue to reel from the effects of the numerous travel advisories that have seen tourist numbers plummet. While most hotels at the coast have shut down completely, those still in operation are looking to cut operation costs. To cut costs, hotels such as Voyager have had to implement salary cuts for the management team to keep going. KTN's Joy Dorimbira takes a look at how hotels are in a race against time if they are to stay afloat.
Abandoned beaches, empty boats are what have characterized the beautiful sandy Mombasa beaches.
a clear indication of a slump in tourist numbers at what was a booming tourist destination 2 years ago. 2015 has no better outlook for tourism, and staff at hotels like Voyager, a part of the Heritage Group of hotels in Mombasa, are now taking a pay cut.
You also have to be fair to owners, and you don't expect to be drawing your full salary when the business is down for the past 2 years.
The recent Garissa University College attack, coupled with the effects of travel advisories, has continuously affected tourism in coastal Kenya. The suspension of international charter flights to Mombasa brought down the number of visitors, leaving hotels' accommodation space at the mercy of domestic tourists.
Many hotels, have sent staff on unpaid leave. Some are actually laying off people. Others retrenching.
As a possible way of survival, hotels have had to venture into sports tourism to attract both local and international tourists to keep the businesses active. Joy Doreen Bira, KTN.
Indeed, tough times for the tourism sector. We do hope that the government will be taking stern action, especially when it comes to beefing up security. Kenya Commercial Bank today launched its Islamic banking unit dubbed KCB Sahau Banking, 6 months after the bank appointed an advisory team to approve Sharia-compliant products. Speaking during the launch, KCB Group Chief Executive Joshua Oigara said the no-interest-based Sahau targets both Muslims and non-Muslims with an aim to deepen the bank's financial inclusion agenda that progressively reaches out to unbanked population. KCB joins the likes of National, Chase and Barclays Bank that have already rolled out Sharia-compliant products. KCB is banking on its regional presence to attract new customers.
And Islamic banking, as it's been said, is not about only for Muslims. In fact, the reality is it's more attractive to non-Muslims, particularly people who believe in clean business.
We want to build regulations in the markets for Islamic banking, for Sharia compliance products. We want to be the centerpiece for Africa today, for the world. So that's where we have enough scholars today to build a global center for excellence.
Well, indeed, some good news there. Let's take a look at how the markets performed in our financial report.
Welcome to KTN Sports. France-based Portuguese golfer Jose Felipe Lima has taken the lead after the opening day of the 48th Barclays Bank Kenya Open Golf Tournament. Lima carded 8 under par 64. The local crowds had also planned to cheer about on the opening day, thanks to the efforts of Kenyan stalwart Dismas Indiza, who carded a 3 under par score to open the 16th start in his national Open.
Dismas Indiza is the best placed Kenyan after Thursday's Day 1 action of the 2015 Barclays Kenyan Open at the KTN Country Club. The Kenyan, who last year made the cut to the final day action, posted a 3 under par 69 after the Day 1, and he is currently placed joint 15th with 16 other players heading into the Day 2 action. Alfred Nando, an amateur player, was the other impressive Kenyan on the course, beating a bunch of professional players to finish second on the Kenyan tally, behind Indiza and an overall joint 32nd position after his swings aided him with a 2 under par 70. The home lads will get a title battle on Friday if they are to make a Saturday's cut.
But we're all happy that more players are still on the course.
So we expect better and good results.
An impressive French-born Portuguese, Joseph Felipe Lima, enjoys the top of the leaderboard after having an impressive display in the opening day. The 33-year-old carded 8 birdies to carve out a narrow 2 strokes advantage after 18 holes. Kenyans, however, remain optimistic to a possible catch-up.
We are looking to a better day tomorrow, all of us, and we're hoping even by the time all the players finish, we'll have a Kenya up there.
Early in the day, a social media posting costed Kenyan golfer Richard Anley his place at the 2015 Barclays Kenyan Open. The Kenyan pro critiquing posting on his Facebook page was termed as an act of indiscipline.
Unfortunately, the player concerned broke all the rules that he had signed up for. And because this is a serious breach in terms of the rules and regulations of this tournament, and of all the challenge to our tournaments globally, the tournament had no option but to withdraw his invitation.
Kenyan hopeful Greg Snow struggled on the greens, and he finished tied on the 105th position at the close of day 1. As expected, day 1 of the Barclays Kenyan Open has been an energy-sapping affair. In tomorrow's tie, the stakes go a notch higher, and the Kenyan golfers will be eager and very ready to sparkle. Moses Wahesi, KTN Sports.
Let's go to athletics now. And a team of selected sprinters wrapped up a 2-day residential training camp where they have been sharpening their skills ahead of the national trials on Friday evening at the Safaricom Stadium in Kasarani. The trials have attracted the best athletes from Nigeria and Botswana.
The Moi International Sports Center Kasarani will come alive tomorrow evening when Kenyan sprinters take to the track in search of the coveted tickets to the second edition of the World Relays Championship set for Nassau, Bahamas. The 4x2 men's team that has already qualified for the World Relays after finishing 5th during the first edition last year is expected to be the showstopper during the trials.
This year the times have been very close. You can't really pick out a single person and say they'll make the team because the times are very close. So how you run tomorrow will really matter. So it's about character. A lot of things will be put into consideration.
This time participate mzuri kwa hizo ongezi nimekimbia na time yangu improve from last season. So I think I'm good.
The 4x4 men's team is among the other teams that will be counting on competition from the visiting countries to attain qualification times. Team member Alphonse Kishoyan admits the challenge will not be an easy one.
Under pressure, but with those 4 teams that are in Kenya, we are going to beat the time.
For some of the athletes, earning a slot in the Kenyan team will provide a perfect opportunity to better last year's performance.
Some of the lessons learned from the last edition, we should concentrate more on baton handling as opposed to individual running, whereby if we do it as a teamwork, it becomes much better because the chemistry comes in and then we'll be able to perform much better.
The Kenyan national trials to the World Relays in Bahamas tomorrow will not just be about athletes with experience, but rather will focus on athletes who are trying to make the Kenyan team for the first time.
If I make the Bahamas team, probably exposure, so that I can know, like, if I'm to make World Championships or All Africa Games, then I know what I'm going to expect.
Nimelan kupoteza ndio nipate Kenya nataka, because each and every time we've been trying, competing with top athletes here in Kenya, and for now I can only thank God for being number 1.
The national trials will kick off at 5 p.m. tomorrow. Despite most of the Kenyan elite athletes choosing to skip the event, a team of selectors hopes to select a strong team that will represent the country at the second edition of the World Relays in Bahamas. Lynn Washira, KTN.
Now let's take a reminder of our big question tonight before we close the bulletin. We did ask you whether you feel in the 2 years that President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto have been in power, whether you are better off. We did take a poll. Let's look at the results for our poll. I don't know whether we can get that on our screen. There you go. 24%, 26% of you rather say yes, and 74% of you say no. Let's start with yes here, and this is from Adon in Garissa, who says the Jubilee government has and is the best administration we ever had. Personally, I'm contented and sure that if the administration is given the opportunity, it will deliver significantly to Kenyans. This is Mohammed Adon in Garissa. Robert from Langata here says, not at all. I am broke. I feel insecure. My land is being grabbed and corruption in every corner of government. That is Robert from Langata, who says does not feel any better in the 2 years that the Jubilee administration has been in power. Oyengo Onyino here says, yes, I have seen funds coming to my county near me. If it is good, let's say it. That is Onyengo Oyino on Twitter. Finally, let's take the very last one here from Abdi Majid Mohammed, who says, no, not at all. I have had high expectations on this regime, but security and corruption combined have deemed the prospect of it being a better life for me as a Kenyan. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you very much for participating in our big question. Thank you very much for watching KTN Prime. Jeff Koinange Live is up next from here on the Standard Group Center on Mombasa Road. On Mombasa Road. Enjoy the rest of your viewing. Have yourself a good night. My name is Wilson Buru. Our sign language interpreter has been William Silla.